Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another AR101. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Expedition Alaska, and we are joined by pretty much a member from almost every team in here. I think we're missing Warrior and 50-60. Like, we're only missing a couple, like Ranger Up. But we're going to get some awesome perspectives from the race. We're going to talk through some of the things that we saw as dot watchers at home and get perspective from the actual race and all their experiences. But first, let's kick it to Mr. Jeff about all things Warrior and upcoming events.
Well, I'm really tired of talking about adventure racing.
Do you ever get tired of talking, first of all?
I do. I actually do. I enjoyed the 5-day drive home that I was by myself and I was at peace and it was all done out of my hands. Everybody was flying home, doing whatever they were doing. I was really thankful for the detox while I drove home, but it was a wonderful experience. I don't want to talk too much about the upcoming races because I really want to talk a lot about Alaska. So the only thing that we have the Bear, which is in 3 weeks. And we'll do that race as soon as I get back from a destination that is unknown to me, that I'll be leaving here on Friday. Don't know where I'm going, but I'll be back in about 14 days. Then we had the Bear. And then, of course, we have Expedition Colorado, which was the fantastic news is that Helen got the permit while I was in Alaska. So we already have our permit in advance because if you remember last year, we didn't get our permit and 3 days before the race started, they said, yeah, half your permit's no good. So it's better that we have our full permit now for Colorado. And if you like mountain biking at 10,000 feet, you're going to be doing a lot of mountain biking in this year's 36-hour race. So looking forward to that. And of course, we have 7 other races for the rest of the year. So just look on our calendar and we'll dive right into those races for the remainder of the year.
Awesome. Yeah, if you have questions or want to get signed up, go to the Warrior website and get yourself signed up because you don't want to miss a Warrior race. Speaking of Warrior racers, first of all, congratulations to everyone in here. Like, give yourself a round of applause because that was an amazing race. You all did amazing. I don't know very many races where, especially expedition races, where you don't have somebody that drops.
Yeah.
And the fact that every single person pushed through. I mean, we've got teams with COVID. We've got, like that we're fighting through those things, not to mention all the things that you come up with in the middle of a 5-day race. So I want to just tell you, first of all, from someone who watched in awe of what you guys were doing, congratulations. You should all be very, very proud. I wish I would have been there. I am very jealous. And so I can't wait to hear about your stories. So first of all, I mean, the fact that this was Expedition Alaska was back, how awesome was this? And I mean, we're joined by Mary, who is a 2-time champion of Expedition Alaska now. Mary, I want your, I want you to talk about this first. And I know we talked a little bit about it live, but like, how great was it to be back at this race again?
It was good. You can't go wrong with Alaska. I loved it before. It was always on my places to go list, and I couldn't resist coming back again for a second round.
Yeah, I mean, it looked freaking amazing. How many of you, just raise of hands, had never been to Alaska before? Okay, so we've had some people that have been there. How many had never raced in Alaska before?
Well, that would be
should be everybody, right? Well, no, because I mean, I know they have other races up there, like running races and things like that. So that had to be such a great experience. And Brent, I want to come to you on this first because I mean, you've done a lot of races and a lot of expedition races. How did this rank in your race, history?
It ranked right up there, right up to the top. I mean, I left the country and have done some pretty awesome races, but in the US, that was number one, definitely number one.
Wow.
I couldn't wait to get up to the glacier, but that didn't happen. But it definitely was number one for the US races for sure.
Well, listen, there's always 2026, right?
Oh yeah, I'm going back.
I think we'll all, I mean, I know I'll be there. I don't know about the
Yeah.
rest of you, but I will definitely be going for the next one. So let's get right into that prologue because Jeff didn't mess around with how you guys started that race. I mean, when you guys first looked up and saw that mountain, were you nervous? Were you like, holy shit, we have to go all the way up that? Or were you like, oh, that's going to be fun? And then how quickly did that turn into not being that way? Hillary, let's go to you because the break, first of all, I just want to look at this panel and I want to talk about the badass ladies that are on this panel because the the power of the lady in this race was just phenomenal and it's represented very well in this panel. Like I think this is the first panel we've ever had where we have this many female athletes and it's just a testament like you guys crushed it. So you were a four woman team. What were your thoughts when you first looked up that mountain?
It's funny. I had been to Seward once before, and I was like, oh, it'd be great to go up Mount Marathon at some point. I just didn't expect it to be at the start of this race. But it's very much a lot of scree, kind of like you read about. But the views are absolutely phenomenal. So I'm really glad that was a really great way to kick off that race and kind of get a lay of the land, see some things, and really just start diving into things. So I personally really enjoyed it, and I think my team did as well.
And speaking of four female teams, we had two of them in this race. Donna, tell us about like the Fragile Flowers and your kind of thoughts when you first got to the mountain. Oh, hold on, you're muted still.
Okay, here we go. I think I'm on. There we go. For me, I have a background that's a lot different from most adventure racers. My husband was a wild sheep hunter, so for me, I did spend a lot of time in mountains. So going up that mountain for Mount Marathon for me was like being back in my happy place. I'm used to side hilling and climbing on scree and going up steep little places. So for me, I was like in heaven. But I know for the other three on my team, it was more difficult for them because they weren't used to traversing in that type of terrain, and they were having troubles with slipping and sliding, and because it was raining and the muddy conditions and everything, it was difficult. But we all enjoyed it, and we loved the views and everything like that. But I was in heaven, so I was very happy with it.
Well, and I think so that kind of brings me to a point about like your teammates and not knowing what to expect. And Jason, I want to come to you on this because your team had never raced together. You had no idea what to expect, no idea what pacing to go or things like that. So how did you guys attack this first prologue and what did that feel like?
Yeah, so absolutely right. I mean, I think we pre-race thought we'd all gotten on the same page as far as strategy goes, and seeing Mount Marathon and knowing that it's the beginning of a 5-day race, I think our strategy was maybe a little bit different. We're trying to be a lot more conservative, going up and down just to sort of save energy. I think it backfired a little bit because I think we caught a lot more of the rain on the tail end, and the trail just became just so difficult to come down. But we learned a lot in those first 2 to 3 legs about each other and how to work together. And unfortunately, we sort of learned, trial by fire, and it wasn't going so well. I'll just say that. And there wasn't, outright, no arguments or anything like that. It was more of just kind of like bubbling under the surface. But
that's almost worse though, right? Because like, I know I'd rather have a teammate that yells at me and gets over it and like we're through it in, maybe 30 minutes or whatever. But like when you don't know how to react to each other or how someone's going to take how you react, that's tough as well.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that too is I'm kind of one that likes to look around and not necessarily take a leadership role or anything like that. And in fact, I came in kind of the 4 of us with the least impressive race resume and sort of expecting to be the one holding people back. And, as we kind of started to learn each other, sort of realizing that resume isn't necessarily everything. And really, I think if you're going to race with a team that you've never raced with before, I would advise kind of having more meetings that are about sort of getting into really more minute details of what your expectations are and what your style is, particularly like how deep you're willing to push to go at a certain pace, right? For me, I'm one of those people that'll just push and push and push, and I don't care, but other people are not like that. We had a couple of our teammates that were more just interested in kind of enjoying the pace and not necessarily pushing to an extreme limit. And I think that initially was tough to get used to, at least for me. But as the race progressed and we kind of settled into things, I think we started to learn a lot more about each other and learn some lessons that I frankly didn't expect to learn in this race. I mean, I thought I'd kind of have one type of experience, and came away with one that was much different, but probably much more valuable.
Well, you did push it at the end. Explain how you did push it at the end and beat the shit out of every team.
Are you talking about the second the O relay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rosie and I, we'd sort of had we were both kind of wanting to go pretty fast, and I love running up and down mountains. So does she. She lives in Northern California, or actually mountains. I grew up in Michigan, where I wasn't running up and down mountains, but it was sand dunes along Lake Michigan, and just sort of the scree would have been my heaven just to bomb down, because it's just like running down a sand dune, except maybe a little bit more punishing if you fall. So Rosie and I were like, let's just try to do something here. We kind of asked Jeff, hey, what's the best time up and down? I think at the time it was like 2:04. And so she and I were just like, let's just do it. Let's just like put it all in there. Let's throw up at the end. Let's see what we can do. And we ended up, just sprinting up. She was sort of being real generous to me, like, okay, just slow down if you're getting too far ahead of me, and we'll stay together. And I really was the one slowing her down. And, it was a lot of fun. I had her yelling back some just fake David Goggins quotes at me, just humorously to motivate me. But, it went up and down in like an hour and 37 minutes. It was, we allowed ourselves 3 pictures at the top, and that was it. And just immediately it just went down.
Well,
that's great.
Speaking of guys slowing their female partners down, Chip and Andrea, you guys had a very different attack of that first mountain. And so did you, Mary, with Team Bones. Like that, I mean, that was a separation point, for the top 3 or 4 teams. So Chip and Andrew, talk about that and like pushing as hard as you can going up those things. And how do you manage that, knowing that there's 5 days of racing behind it?
Well, I think it's important to try to give it your all in the beginning and try to keep right up there with the people that are going fast. Because once you start losing sight of teams, your motivation kind of wanes a little bit. And, for that first little bit, we were close to them, like we could keep them in our sights. And we were right there with Warrior for a long while until I kind of had to slow down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting to push your limits. And, we've done enough racing now, I think, that we didn't have the mindset of saving ourselves for later, like, well, we feel good now. We're going to give it our all now and just have fun and go as hard as we can. So, and we didn't want those leaders to get too far in front of us.
And Mary, you guys fired up that hill. You guys were moving. How did you know how far back like Warrior was at that point?
No, we could see them down a ways. And then when we got up to get the first checkpoint or the passport and turned around, they were nowhere around. So we had a general idea. We had maybe 10 minutes max, but it's hard to tell because people kind of took slightly different routes, I think. And it was super foggy and cloudy up at the very top, so you couldn't really see much until you drop below the cloud line.
Yeah, and Rangers were up there with them too. They were actually second at that time. Actually, they ran up the mountain first, I think, and then Bones passed them.
Yeah.
No, Ranger passed
Bones
us
got there
on the
Oh,
way.
past you guys. Okay.
Yeah. Ranger, I think Ranger was 3rd up the mountain total, but they were right up there in the very front. And I knew they would probably be strong on foot. I don't think anybody knew how that would be, how that would translate into, on the bike and in the water and all those things. So, Angel, talk about like your team and I mean, you had a very experienced team. What was that like? You know, obviously, I don't think navigation was ever going to be an issue with the team that you had. Uh,
No, yeah, I would agree with that. But yeah, I mean, as far as experience goes, I mean, Ron and Brenda have just an obscene amount of experience doing expedition races. I have done one prior to this, which was a C2C, so a shorter version, right? And I did that solo. So I hadn't done it on a team before. So team dynamics with multi-day racing was something that I really didn't know what to expect. Longest race up until that point was, well, it was supposed to be a 50 hour, but it wasn't 50 hours. So something like that, right? And that happened to be with Mary. So she's an awesome teammate, and I haven't had to deal with that, you know, adversity with racing with her. So yeah, going into the race, I was pretty excited about it. I knew both Ron and Brenda could navigate. I'm a strong navigator too. I was hoping to contribute. But I was actually with Mary with all the travel fiascos. And so coming into the race, I was basically on no sleep for 2 days already. So I was a mess for the first couple of days of the race after we slept. And then when we slept, then I was actually able to contribute as a team member, I think. So, but yeah, I mean, I think we started off really strong and our navigation was really solid. I don't think we ever really had any more than just like a couple minutes of errors or anything throughout the whole race. So they did a great job.
Well, and so like everybody came off the mountain in about what was expected, you know, like running down that scree had to be interesting. I mean, I saw some of the videos and like I don't think anybody realized like how steep that was until we saw Randy's pictures. You know, I mean, uh Jeff from AR Insider and I were on a live and we tried to pull up Google Earth and we were trying to show people like what that looked like in that area. It didn't do it justice, I'm sure. So like, but you guys all bombed down the hill and then got on your bikes. And at this point, it's started to rain, right? So um, you have a little section of road and then you start hitting the trails. So Chip, I'll let you guys talk about the trails first and kind of what you were expecting and then what you got.
You know what? Yeah, I want to talk to you about perspective of what they had to do at the start. If you're in Colorado and you're going to go do a 14er, most of the trailheads are around 10,500, 11,000. So you're basically going up 3,000 feet when you look at a 14er and you're like, oh, wow, what an accomplishment. These guys started at 5 feet and had to go to 3,200 immediately. So it's like climbing a 14er in Colorado and coming back down and starting a race. That's exactly what it's like.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, like, and then you still have, you know,
Yeah.
a full 5 days of racing to go because that was the prologue.
Yep.
You know, just to put that into perspective, I just saw a race this last weekend where the prologue was to put together a little Lego thing. So you guys are probably wishing for that, right? For your separation. Which I mean, look, I've done the Lego thing and it's fun, but it's definitely not like that. So Chip, talk about the trails and what you were expecting and then what you got.
And let me pair it off of what Jeff said. In addition to what he just said, if we had done this race in Virginia, it would have been trees the whole way up. But here, you're starting at sea level, and by the time you make it to 1,000 feet, it's like being in Colorado at 12,000 feet. You're above the tree line, and it's all rock. So you get the beauty of being in big mountains, even though you just started from sea level. So that made Alaska 10 times better than any race in Virginia, regardless of the size of the mountains or anywhere up in the Appalachians. It doesn't matter. It feels high altitude, even though you're at sea level. So it was really amazing. Yeah, the biking section for us was I wouldn't call it a crux, but it was, we didn't know a lot of the teams because, you know, there was only 11 teams, I think, or 11 or 12. We knew Bones was going to crush it. We knew Warrior's going to crush it. And we knew some of the other teams that were very compatible. We didn't know the ones we didn't know. And the biking sections, when it's like, okay, the Ranger guys beat us up and down. Like these, you know, they're special operators. These dudes are tough. Like, let's try to catch them. And so we started off on the bike, like, let's kind of hammer. And so we were able to pass them on the bike before we even got to the trails. And then I was like, okay, our team's good at trails. Let's really go through this, even though it's wet and rainy and slick and dangerous, and they're not really single track. It's hiking trails. But yeah, for anybody that wasn't good on a mountain bike, used to technical, slippery, hard ups and downs and weird wonky routes that make you slide around, little bridges that you had to kind of bunny up little curbs to get on the bridges and back off while you're going around a corner. I mean, for anybody that wasn't proficient on a mountain bike, these trails would very much slow you down.
But I want to say too, I thought it was pretty cool that there was not much of that you could skip. It didn't make any sense to skip any of the trails. So like, while this race provided a lot of opportunities for things you could skip later on, like the punch card, you had to go up Mount Marathon, you had to go on these trails to get to the next place. So every team, no matter where you were in the rankings, had a challenge, and a beautiful challenge at that.
Yeah, and I it's funny because I'm watching a lot of shaking of heads like that. Yes, that was technical. Donna, I was watching you when this came up. Like, what was that thought? I mean, like, it was raining probably pretty good when you guys started on that bike section. How much more dangerous did that make those trails?
It was pretty sketchy. I'm pretty proficient at mountain biking, and I'm pretty good. But we had a couple on our team that spent a lot of time picking their bike up, and they're like, "I never crashed my bike. I never crashed my bike," and they were crashing all over and stuff. So it was tricky for us because we were like at the very back of of everybody. I think by this time I think we were in the tail end, and it got kind of tough. And there was one time, like when I was going over a bridge and I went to make the turn to go over the bridge, and I saw my back wheel wasn't going to make the bridge. So I had to make a decision. What's the best? I knew I was going to crash, and it's like, what's the best way to save me and my bike? So I kind of just threw my bike off, and I went sliding onto the bridge, and my bike went into the creek right next to the bridge. But you know, we were both fine, so I was happy. But yeah, it was tough riding, and it's tough when you know, like one of our teammates, she was having difficulties, and she kept getting down on herself because she was like, I can ride this stuff, I don't know why I can't. And it was just the conditions were, you know, it was difficult. I said, we all fall, you just have to laugh at it, get up and keep going. You're not hurt, you just keep going and laugh, and everybody falls, you know.
Well, I did the race ramble with Team Disability the other day. And Andrea, do you want to tell your story? Because I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, well, you know, just like Donna said, everyone fell. I fell. Well, I don't know. Chip never fell. Did you fall? Anyway, yes. The way I fell was what was so funny. It was just the opposite of Donna. Like, I had to pick what I was going to do. I kind of, you know, my momentum was going one way, which was over and off the bridge. And so that's what happened. My bike landed on the bridge, and I landed, you know, luckily it was a grassy, like, little brook, and it was dry. Well, dry. We were all totally wet, but the fall was just soft and slow enough that I kind of had time to turn a little bit and kind of land on my backpack a little bit more. And yeah, but I went totally off the whole bridge.
And and like her teammates, like Caitlin was telling the story, and she's like, I just look over and I see Andrea going like falling in the woods, and you're like, well, there she goes. I don't know if she's coming back.
Well, Doug, the one thing about Alaska is there's no mountain bike association there. There's no trail maintenance groups up there at all. They're very rugged, raw, unbiked trails. Now, the Resurrection Trail probably gets the most biking. All the other trails, nobody bikes on, except for after 21 downhill. That's the only groomed trail that I actually know of that's there in Alaska. So when it comes to mountain biking there, you got to be pretty technical.
Wait, but there, especially around Anchorage and Palmer, there are bike parks where the trails are unbelievable. I mean, some of the best ones we've ever seen. They just weren't part of the race because you kind of kept us away from the cities, which I appreciated. But just if anybody travels to Alaska, the trails that are actually mountain biking trails are world class.
Yeah.
Well, and so, I mean, that bike section was pretty straightforward, right? It was a pretty much a trail up to the first real crux of the race, which was that trek and paddle section. And Mary, I want to come to you on this first, because obviously you guys were the first ones there. You could really feel out like what your lead was. I got to see a little bit of your transition and how fast it was. I'll let other people talk about their transitions in here.
It was just faster. Maybe not be
Yeah,
fast.
faster. Yeah, maybe not fast, but like when you guys got to that point, like what were your thoughts going into this like trek paddle section? Like how do you prepare for that?
Well, the biggest thing is we want to make sure when we left the TA, we had what we needed. It was raining and that makes it very hard to TA, especially when you're trying to put dry clothes on because you're getting in your dry suit. So I mean, we had to do a full clothing change. There was no point in putting on our dry suits over our wet bike stuff. So that made it difficult. And then inflating boats and everything else. The biggest thing was just to make sure we had what we needed because it was going to be a long stretch and we didn't want to forget any mandatory gear or anything we would need. It is easier that we pushed off already in the boats that we could inflate them that, instead of having to pack our bags and leave on a trek first. So that made it a little bit easier to make things a little more efficient and make sure we had what we needed. But yeah, I mean, we had a T-zip problem and I mean, I don't know what was going on, but we were in there for like 55 minutes. So then the goal became, let's get out before Rib Mountain or Warrior comes in. And I think we did, but I'm guessing they were pulling in the TA right when we were pushing off on the water.
Yeah, it was kind of cool because like as you guys were pushing off, they were coming in, and I think Jesse might have been the only one that actually saw you guys because he was the first in, so they could see you. And then it was kind of the same thing when they got into this ability, like they could see them like getting ready to leave. So like the top three teams were seeing each other. For the rest of you that were getting off of that first bike, first of all, how happy were you to get off the bike at that point? Hillary, like talk about that, and like were you ready to get in the boat?
Yeah, I definitely was. So I'm from Colorado. The trails for mountain biking are usually dry. So mud was something that you don't get a whole lot of exposure to. So the mud was challenging for us as a team. So I was really looking forward to like switching gears, putting on a pair of clean clothes, and trying to stay as dry as possible and switching over to a different discipline because the mud was definitely challenging. So and a nice change of pace, a nice break, getting some food, I think really did our team a world of wonders and kept morale up that early in the race.
And Brenda and Angel, I'll let you guys kind of touch on this too. Like, how were you guys feeling coming off of that bike?
Well, I think a lot of our team is full of flatlanders except for one teammate. So Mount Marathon kind of tore up some quads.
Yeah.
In that start and then being on the bike. So I was especially looking forward to using my upper body and getting into the boat and just smooth sailing with that. So definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was very tired of being wet on my bike. So it was very nice it was awesome that there was the U-Haul there and there was sort of a makeshift changing room. And so we just grabbed all of our stuff and stripped down and dry clothes and dry suits. And you just feel just like 100 times better immediately just by having dry clothes on. Sort of rejuvenates you a little bit to just, get ready to launch back out into the next thing.
For those at home, they're probably laughing at the fact that you just said, I wanted to get off my wet bike to then go get in a pack raft where you're
Yeah, but I was completely dry. It was amazing.
That's true. Jason, how many of your team had actually had experiences in pack rafts?
So at least two of us, I bought one for this race and got to test it out on some good rivers and actually took it up to Michigan on Lake Michigan when we had some like 5-foot white caps out there. So I got some good feel for it. And frankly, paddling is kind of my strength. I mean, even in college, all my roommates were on the crew team, so I kind of worked out with them a lot. So I was like really eager to get in a pack raft, but it was sort of one of the lowish points of the race. We finished that bike and we were we were kind of destroyed by those trails and had to do a lot of hiking with it. And we get to the TA well after everybody, I think, pretty far back. And we'd heard that Jeff made the executive decision to move us up to the next TA. And I was obstinate. I was pretty much like, no, I will paddle my ass up to the next team right now. And I was just like, guys, let's go. Like, I was pretty obstinate. And luckily, like, Jeff was cool and let us let us do it. And, you know, we ended up getting moved up anyway, but I felt like we at least kind of got a nice rhythm in that. And, you know, really, that's where a lot of the better communication started, because you're moving a bit slower and really, you know, kind of, there's a sort of a constant work, but then people can take breaks a little bit, and not everybody is sort of the one necessarily dictating pace. So, you know, for me, I was super excited, super jazzed about it, and I thought we did pretty well. That was kind of the first leg where I thought we started to get a good pace going.
Well, that's awesome.
That leg, dude, that leg caused so many problems. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you guys actually went through the trouble section better than almost anybody. You know, because the first in the middle of the pack teams just went all over the place, had all kinds of problems about the lower lake going up to the upper lake. They didn't realize that the water flowed at them. So that was a little trick in my book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love that one. That was my favorite, like my favorite puzzle to solve. And had we executed the way that we had, I was sleep deprived. I threw a rope across the second, like kind of perpendicular stream, and got caught for probably, we had to sort it out for almost like probably half hour. But that was more fun. I do a lot of like swift water stuff, so that was kind of right up my alley. I love that.
Well, and it's funny because I was hoping JD would be on here, because I think they had the hardest time in that section. And I'm going to share my screen just to show everybody at home the section that we're talking about. So in the paddle section, the paddle was the first places where teams really had to make decisions on how they were going to go, what they were going to do. I'm going to change to the satellite view. The blue line is just a recommendation, so not many people actually took the blue line. Some went down here and had a hard time. But in this section, which is right in here in the middle, this section right in here, teams had to figure out how to get across. I'm going to click on 5060's map just to show kind of what the troubles that a lot of teams had. And Brenda, I want to talk to you guys because Ron actually posted a video of that stream. I say stream, it was more like a raging river that teams had to try to decide if they were going to cross. And it caused a lot of people, I mean, it caused 50-60 5 hours, because they got into this section right here and then decided to backtrack, try to go up above it, and then came back and ended up being in the same exact location, but 5 hours later, and then having to just muscle their way through it. So Brenda, talk a little bit about that. I mean, I saw the video. What was the decision making that you guys had at that point?
It's quite interesting. We obviously we saw those two guys cross the river, ferry across. And there were a few people on our team that thought, oh, it's too dangerous, don't want to do it. Let's hike up the river and find a place that we can walk across, and it would be safer. So we had deflated our pack rafts and we moseyed around looking for a place and couldn't find anything. And after about 2 hours, we ended up going back to the same place that those guys ferried across, and we blew up our pack rafts and
just did it,
because it ended up being the best choice after we realized we couldn't walk across it anywhere we scouted. So we lost about 2 hours. We should have just did it in the first place. But by the time we decided, we were like, that's the best thing to do now. Let's just do it. And it was a hoot. It was a lot of fun to go through those rapids and ferry across.
Yeah,
I guess you're not mentioning one is there's Devil's Club everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
So I was scared to death we're going to pop the pack raft. Mosquitoes were bad in that area. So the more you got dusk and dark, and I think Brenda, when you guys went across, it was probably dark, right?
It was daylight.
It was daylight. Okay,
Yeah.
sure. But I mean, it was kind of, you just can't stand there and think. It's like the bugs are all over your face.
Well, even just the video that Ron posted, it was, I mean, the thickness, I mean, it was like chest high or higher, like right along the bank. So you weren't like just standing there on the bank going, oh, I think I should just make my way across. And so it's funny to hear that. Like, Donna, what was that decision making like for you guys when you got to that section?
Well, we were trying to figure out how we were gonna get across, and we were trying to, see where, other teams had tried to move and things like that. And then that's when we met up with 5060, and they're like, well, we've already been here, we've been there, we've been at this for like 5 hours. So that's when, we weren't really sure if we wanted to try to ferry across. So what we wound up doing was crossing the channel and going across to the other side and going up and over into the second lake. So I mean, we were trying to decide what we were going to do, and then we kind of lucked in by meeting up with 5060, who had already exhausted all the other possibilities. And then they're like, well, this is what we're going to do. And I said, well, we'll do the same. We decided to do the same thing, kind of followed them across. And
Yeah, I
so
thought you guys were there at the same time.
yeah, we didn't lose as much time because someone had done all the previous legwork for us. So that was good for us, I guess.
It's nice when
Yeah.
other people can make the mistakes so you don't have to, right?
Yeah, I was ready to go across. There was that blowdown that was going across. I said, I can go across there and carry, we had our throw ropes with us. We could have, carried a throw rope across and then, brought the boats. But, we opted not to do that when, we met up with 5060. So.
Well, and I think that brings
Doug, 50 meters. Okay, so if you approach the river that came from one lake to the other, 50 meters to the left is an old abandoned house, and it's an easy trail up and over. It takes 15 minutes.
Mhm.
It's not even that thick. So only about 3 teams discovered that. Everybody else
Yeah.
went right and hit that stream that actually ended up being a river because of all the rain and got trapped in there. And all you had to do is go to the left 50 meters and it would have been fine. And that's where
Right.
I went. So
Yep.
well,
That's
see,
what we did it.
you always have to think about what did the race director do, right? Like
I didn't go through that shit.
well, and it brings, I mean, Chip, I think you brought up a good point. Like in this section, raise of hands, how many people decided to hike in their dry suits and leave them on the whole time?
Yeah.
Stayed in our dry suits. Yeah.
But not till later.
I mean, in that
Usually they
section we did.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
section. we
Yeah.
did.
Because I mean, that takes time. The blowing up the pack rafts takes time. Deflating them takes time. Like all of those things take time. So I'm wondering like what that thought process was like of going in and out of, your dry suits and deflating or, reinflating pack rafts. Like I think there's only 2 teams in here. Like there were only 3 total that went up for that CP7. I think that was up there on the lake. And Mary, talk a little bit about that. I mean, you guys were leading by a good bit at this point, going up and over to that checkpoint. How was that? And did you guys get out of your dry suits? Did you take your pack rafts with you? And did you paddle across, or how did you attack that?
Yeah, we of course we took our pack rafts with us because it was supposed to be on an island, and as much as Roy wanted to swim it, we were like, no, that water's gonna be icy cold. I will carry the pack raft. We kept our dry suits on, but dropped them down to our waists because it was a little bit warm right then, hiking uphill. But then it started to rain again, so we ended up putting them back on. But we were in, brush over our head for a while. The trail just kind of disappeared. It was there, but you just had to look for it because the brush was, or the weeds and wildflowers were up over our heads. And then, yeah, then we came down to this nice little beach, and then you could see the island off in the distance. It was a very, very serene lake. Just no one was out there. We heard a loon. I mean, it was right before dark, so it was just very peaceful out there.
When
And then when we were hiking out, we ran into Warrior. But
Okay,
we had a
so
little
you knew the
trouble trying to
guy.
find we had a little trouble trying to find the trail again. It's like it swallowed us up, and then we expected to see our tramp down weeds, but it took us a while to find our line to head back out. And then we ran into Warrior.
And I mean, Hunter talked about that you could come from the north on that island, and there was like a little section that you could walk across. So you never even had to get in the water if you wanted to, like, not get in the water. But this ability, did you guys get in the water to get that checkpoint? You guys
Yeah,
packed
it would have been a
raft?
rough bushwhack. The beach that Mary's talking about, I mean, it was 300 or 400 meters away from the island. So it would have been a long swim, or it would have been a really burly bushwhack around. And on the map, you couldn't tell that there was a crossing. It looked like it was out in the water. So, we just did what we thought we had to do and play the rafts and go across.
And I mean, were you guys fearful of damaging your dry suits, knowing how much more, like, number one, how cold the water was, and you don't want to get wet. And Jason, talk a little bit about that. Like, were you hiking in yours?
Yes, and actually, I think I spent so much time in the water, especially fixing the mistake of a tied up rope, that I ended up puncturing my dry suit at one point. I found the puncture layer was kind of waist level, so every time I got in the water at that level, my booty's filled with ice cold water, and so the second pack rafting leg, I pretty much sat in ice cold water on my feet for like 10 hours or whatever it was. That was pretty miserable, but generally, I think it was pretty wise, like in the dry suits. I mean, we kind of did the thing where, you know, our waist part of it kind of tightened pretty well, so you could kind of take the top off, let it dangle, and still walk. And we, for the most part, we're on wide enough trails where we weren't getting caught up with it. And you know, I thought we generally did a pretty good job planning. So we had packs sort of big enough to put for two people to carry the rafts fairly readily, and we had kind of paddles broken down. And so I think generally for that, we were pretty mobile and did a good job just getting through that way.
And Angel, maybe you can talk a little bit about, I'm going to pull up the map here. And I'll pull up you guys' team, because a lot of teams, obviously not a lot of teams went up and got 7, but you were one of the teams late in the race that still went up and got 8.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were still trying to drop the least amount possible. And so we were paddling strong. We didn't want to trek anymore with the boats. We just had such a fiasco with the earlier situation. And you know, and our ultimate goal was to make the glacier as well. So we were trying to really strategize with what are the right checkpoints to drop to save us the most amount of time. And yeah, we were paddling really well, so it made sense for us to keep going for that last one.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's an interesting point to make for racers at home who are thinking about doing longer races like this and having to make selections of, like, what do you take to make sure you get to the fun stuff? I mean, everybody in here probably was really looking forward to the glacier. I mean, it was probably the most epic part of this race. And, you know, so, I mean, Chip and Andrea, you guys made decisions early in a couple legs to actually cut out a big section just so you would have enough time for that.
Yeah, we cut out that big bike loop. I can't remember what you call it, but
Russian Trail.
Russian Trail, and we didn't know it was horrible, but later on, Bones and Warrior are like, guys, you should have skipped that. But we literally were making the decision saying, even if it costs us placements, because at that point we didn't know if people had been cutting points or not. We're like, we want to do the glacier, and we know that's going to take, I think we had scheduled 7 or 8 hours, and I think it really would have taken 10 or 11 or more
For that bike.
for that one bike loop. So we literally cut it saying that will fast forward us on our time schedule to make sure that we have some flexibility at the end to do the glacier. And I even mentioned it in the live little interview I did while I'm like needing sleep really bad, that, you know, this might cost us our placement. It's okay. We came here to do the glacier. We're going to do the glacier. So don't think bad of us for skipping.
Yeah. So you guys get through the paddle and trek section and get on to the next trek section around Crescent Lake, right? Hillary, tell us a little bit about like what that was like, because I saw some videos from Hunter where, I mean, some of the bush was like higher than Hunter's head. How was that? I mean, Donna, you can speak to this too. Like, how was that maybe being a little vertically challenged, getting through some of that section?
Yeah, so our team was a little bit on the shorter side, so it was quite the jungle, but it was beautiful with all the flowers. But there were definitely moments where I know we were thinking, I'm kind of glad we're in the middle, and someone else has blazed this trail, because I'm not sure how we would have a vantage point to kind of like get a sense of which direction we should go, because it was definitely, you know, 1-2 feet over our heads at some points, it felt like. So I found it really fun. It was really beautiful, but definitely, you know, at that point, a lot of bushwhacking, a lot of berry bushes we were going through, flowers, definitely couldn't see. We took a nap on the one area where the brush was a little bit lower, because we could take a break there, but definitely glad to be in the middle of the pack for that section. It made navigating a lot easier for us, for sure.
Donna, what about you guys?
Yeah, for us it was, I felt like I was going through a jungle. It was like, it was crazy because we were doing it mostly at night, and so you're walking, and when I'm just trekking, I like to use my night vision, so I go by other people's headlights and I'm walking in the dark, and it was just really eerie because you had this brush that was up right, you're like walking down like a column almost, like a narrow hallway, and the brush is just higher than my head. And then there was like glowing, the feet in front of me were lit up because of the lights behind me. And it was just it was like almost surreal, the feeling that I had when I was, walking. It was pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
I love night stuff because I feel like I'm more focused. Like during the day, you're looking at everything, you're taking everything in. You're not as focused on what's happening in front of like the next 10 feet. I imagine in that section, you were always focused because you had to look where you were going, right? I mean, and
Mhm.
see ahead of you.
I looked at, I learned a lesson also as a race director that I vetted that section in early June, and it was only up to my waist. I could see forever. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a beautiful section. The trail leading to the lake itself was pretty wide open. It's a very used trail. Once you get to the lake, all the way around the lake it was waist high. And I'm like, oh, this will be a beautiful section. And then when Hunter and Nick went to go set, they were like, dude, we're in 10-foot weeds. I'm like, what are you talking about? It was waist high, a month and a half ago. What are you talking about? Yeah. So I learned my lesson that plants only have a 4-month growing period and they take advantage of it.
Yeah, because they're in Alaska. I mean, they only get that certain, window of opportunity. And they live up to that opportunity.
Now the locals say they don't go on that trail past June. Like, what? You're sitting those racers past June? No way. You can't see. And I'm like, well, they'll figure it out.
The other
Jason,
thing about and we didn't know that the grass was gonna be that tall, but even looking at the map now, like I was like, damn, if we would have brought our pack rafts, we could have smoked this section and paddled around and just whooped everybody. I'm surprised, Mary, you and your team didn't have some tricks up your sleeve to bring the little baby pack rafts to paddle it, because that would have saved so much time.
Speaking of a little trickery, Mary, I heard there might have been a little boat usage at one of the opportunities. You want to tell us about that?
I don't know what you're talking about. So the CP, the one on the island that we carried our pack rafts out to, I think it was number 7.
7.
Yeah.
7. I don't know who told you, but no, there was a canoe and 3 other boats on the beach, and we had a little discussion about it, and we decided that every team had the same opportunity, so therefore it was okay. And we put on our PFDs, and I threw the canoe in the water, make sure it actually would hold, and it seemed to have no leak, so all 4 of us jumped in the canoe and paddled out to the island, grabbed that checkpoint, and came back.
That is adventure racing ingenuity at
I
its
mean,
best.
it saved us, 15 minutes of inflating and then deflating.
Yeah.
So, we stayed close to shore. We weren't completely, what's the word, confident in that canoe that it would hold all 4 of us, but it was super fun. We would had we gotten there at the same time as Warrior, obviously we all would have had to take pack rafts. I mean, that just wouldn't have been cool. But when we came back, they still hadn't been there, so they still had the opportunity to launch. And it turns out they did as well.
We considered it, but we just didn't trust it. We're like,
That's what we use to set the course. So yeah.
Good.
See, you got to think like the race director, right? Like that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
At this point, I want to kind of talk a little bit about like sleep strategy, because Alaska was a very different animal than a lot of other races because of the very limited amount of darkness. Brenda, I mean, you've raced in a lot of places. How was that different because of the fact that there was only 4 hours of real darkness? How did that affect your sleep strategy?
Don't get a whole lot of sleep anyway when I race, so it worked out good, and I really did enjoy the more daylight that was available. But I think in the 5 days we raced, we only got 10 hours anyway of sleep, so it worked out. I would have loved to have raced that race during the summer solstice. That would have just been really cool. But I like the daylight, the long daylights.
I mean, it gives you a little bit more strength, right? Because you're not
Mhm.
dragging because of the darkness,
Right.
and fighting off sleep monsters because you want to close your eyes because your body's telling you, hey, listen, go to sleep. Jason, where you guys got bumped through that trekking section at Crescent Lake, right?
Yeah, sounds like we lucked out.
You didn't.
I
You didn't
wasn't
get
happy
the
about it
jungle
then.
track.
I was ready to fight somebody at the time. But no.
So did you guys get bumped up to the next paddle? So the TA at TA3?
Or so we got like up to the bike.
Okay, so you guys missed the whole next paddle section as well. And listen, I will tell you from someone that has had to be pulled from like TA to TA, there's no shame in that. And like it's your adventure, right? Like, and I know maybe it's difficult to handle, especially during the race. But like there's no shame in getting moved up ahead so that it gives you time to do everything else.
No,
And at the time, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, Jeff. I mean, I want to make sure that it's clear that that the decisions that are made by our organization to move you forward is truly based on safety. Once our staff gets so spread out and you're so far back at the end, while Bones is way out in front, it becomes a safety issue for our team to be able to rescue if you guys have any problems. So we have to keep you as tight as possible. And of course, we designed the course with that loop in there just so that we can compact you guys back together again so that if there's any issues, we're there relatively available.
Yeah, and totally, with the benefit of sleep, because I think at the time we hadn't actually slept yet. We were 36 hours in or something and still no sleep. I was ready to keep going anyway because I'm just maybe a couple screws loose. But yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I wouldn't, I'm not second guessing that now, obviously, with the benefit of a little sleep and just, also hearing about the weeds that I came back having experienced way too much Devil's Club. And actually, Devil's Club wasn't the bad thing. It turned out it was that parsnip that was just brutal. I got real bad reaction all over. I mean, I think Hillary saw me. I think we were kind of near them when I just decided to just lay down in Resurrection Creek because it was just so bad, like the burning. But
And so Donna, you guys were with 5060 trying kind of towards the end of that trek. Did you guys all decide to like take a break, like take a nap? Was it like it looked like the movement was very, very slow in that top section to the before T83? Or was it just slow moving in that section?
I think we were just slow moving. I'm trying to think. We slept on the Resurrection Trail on the bike section, but I don't think we slept at all on the trek going along Crescent Lake. I think it was just slow moving for us.
Yeah, and I mean it's hard to tell on the tracker, right? Because it's a 10-minute interval. Sometimes it's hitting, sometimes it's not. And I wasn't sure, but were you guys with 5060 at that point?
No, we were by ourselves at that point.
See, yeah, because it looks like you're so close. Like when I'm watching it, oh, I wonder if they see the other team.
Yeah, no, we didn't see any other teams on that whole long trek. We were completely by ourselves, which was fine. We did all right.
How was the next paddle, Hillary, after that trekking section before the bike up Resurrection Trail?
Oh, the lake into the river, right? I think it's we really enjoyed that. It was really refreshing to get, a break, get into the trek. I think that was probably one of our favorite water sections because it was a little bit more exciting. We were actively trying to, hit the right currents and the rapids. So I think that was a really great section to have right before the bike. We really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun.
And Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but that section was a lot of like class 1 rapids, like right through that section.
Yeah, I mean, that river is super, super wide. So you could go into the rapids or you could actually stay to the right or the left and just kind of avoid them if you want. So it was dealer's choice in that river.
And a lot of teams kind of got together at TA4 before the big bike. Like, how many of you saw, I mean, how great was that, first of all, to see other teams again, probably after not seeing teams in a while, and then also having the typical Warrior food delivery, and Mama Sonia at the TAs. Talk a little bit about the TA life, Angel. Like, what, because I know it's hard to leave TAs from Warrior.
That was the worst TA. That I didn't expect that road to be so busy during the night. I thought that it would be, the trucks would be done and everybody, that was so noisy. It's not the worst one, but that's the only thing that the Forest Service allowed us. That was the only place we could take out. So
Yeah, no, the TAs were fantastic, and everybody always raves about Jeff's TAs. So, and it's true. I mean, every single time we came into a TA, if there was hot food, everybody on our team was like, "Yeah, we want hot food," and here comes hot food. And so we eat, and then we, whatever we're doing, we're resting. Maybe we sleep, then we eat again, and then we leave. And it's amazing how much food you can actually consume. I don't think I was ever hungry at all in this race until the final trek. That was the only time I ever actually felt like hunger. And thankfully, I had some mashed potatoes with me to get me through that. But yeah, no, the food was great. That TA was nice. We slept there for a couple hours before we got on the big bike leg. So yeah, it was good.
Yeah, and Chip,
Yeah, shout out to Joel on the grill, man. Joel's awesome.
Joel's
yeah.
awesome. I love that guy.
so in that TA,
by the way, he's trying to come to C2C and or Colorado, one or the other.
Bring
So,
him both.
yeah.
Awesome.
That dude was a rock star.
And so was Sonia and Chris.
So yeah,
So,
they're amazing.
You know,
Yeah.
all of your volunteers,
And
and
Nick.
Hunter,
And
all y'all.
Yeah, we had the golden
Mark.
team. We had the dream
Oh, yeah,
team there
Mark.
for sure.
I got a special Joel story too.
go ahead.
So like at the first TA when I was talking about hot dogs for some reason, and I sort of made the joke like, well, what do you guys? I got ketchup and mustard. Like, do you have celery salt? And for anybody that's been to Chicago or knows what a Chicago hot dog has on it, it definitely doesn't have ketchup, but one of the more subtle ingredients is celery salt. And it really makes the thing. So I recommend trying it. And I sort of mentioned it half joking. He's like, what are you talking about? And we had this conversation. By the next TA, he had gone to the store and had a whole thing of celery salt. It was just miraculous. It was hilarious.
That's awesome. At that TA, Bones and Warrior were on that southern loop, getting their ass kicked. Mary, tell me about that trail system, because like I heard that trail was not a lot of fun to bike.
It was not that bad. Come on.
Jeff, did you go out there?
Yeah, I went.
in July.
I went in June.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
waist high.
Yeah, we found out from the locals that only idiots ride it after Memorial Day. So there you go. It was the same thing that we've been all fighting in that trek before. It's just the wildflowers are just over your head, and cow parsnips, are literally at eye level. So I mean, we had helmets on, I think, to protect us from the cow parsnips. It's just like we could tell, you couldn't see the trail, you could feel it underneath your wheels. So you could tell it was there, but you couldn't see it. And so it was amazing what we were able to ride, and then eventually someone would just fall over because you just couldn't see the logs or the rocks. So I mean, I thought it was really entertaining. My teammate Megan was getting so frustrated because she's claimed she had fallen more times on that trail than she had her whole life. So it was just, but it wasn't a hard fall. You just landed in the weeds. It wasn't like you were getting hurt. It was just more kind of a comical, terrible riding. But it was all good. We got through it.
Well,
But
and
I
you
think
guys,
it would have taken some of the teams a lot longer if they weren't confident to ride through that. And
Yeah.
the more teams that came through there, we probably actually broke the trail for them as well. But Warrior even said they could tell where we had fallen off our bikes because they just see this like tamped down spot of weeds, and then then they keep going.
well, and you guys, so you were the only two teams that went around that section, and then everyone else just went up the Resurrection Trail and started going. And I know this ability was waiting and thinking you guys were going to catch them pretty much the whole time during that trail. Just briefly, I mean, Don, we'll start with you guys. Tell us about riding on that trail, because I mean, the pictures and things that we've seen from it is just amazing. And you guys actually slept in one of the cabins too? I know. I hate when you think that you're unmuted and you mute yourself. And all right, so Brenda, we'll go to you guys. How did you guys like the Resurrection Trail?
Well, I can start with that one. There is a lot of Devil's Club, and it was definitely harder to ride than a nice groom trail here in Michigan. But I enjoyed it. One of the teammates on my team didn't train very well for this race, so he was pushing his bike a lot. I won't mention his name, but he pushed his bike a lot, and but it was rideable, and I enjoyed it. It was, and then the downhill was just phenomenal. We could have stayed in that downhill forever. It was just great.
Well, I heard there was like 15 miles of downhill.
It was
What it felt
phenomenal.
like, zooming back down. But at that point, I mean, people have been on the bike for a very long time, some longer than others. And Donna, do we have your mic fixed? Because
Yeah, finally got my mic fixed. Yeah. Yeah,
you
I
guys,
love the Resurrection Trail. That was a lot of fun. And it was like Kelly, one of my teammates, was like, how do you like stay in the trail? Because like a lot of it, you're riding like in a trough, and you've got like 12 inches for your bike tire to stay in. And every time she kept like trying to move because the bushes were in the way. And you just kind of have to hold your own when you're riding through, know that the bushes are going to move and just keep straight through the trail. So I mean, there wasn't one part of that Resurrection Trail that I didn't love. I absolutely love the whole thing. It was just beautiful, and we wound up having we slept because we were having some difficulties when it got dark, riding. And I'm like, we need to sleep now because we can move twice as fast when the daylight comes. So then we slept for about 2 hours. We got up, we started riding again, and Kelly's like, why didn't we have trails like this last night when we were trying to ride? And I'm like, it's the same
same
trail,
trail,
same
yeah.
conditions. It just everything looks so much different in the daylight, when you can actually see what you're riding on versus what you're perceiving in the dark. So yeah. But that Resurrection Trail, that was like, I could have ridden that for round and around and around for 5 days and never got tired of it. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that section.
And Jeff, what was the total mileage of that bike section?
115. Well, if you included Russian.
If you did Russian, okay. So,
Yeah.
we take out some of that, but still, you're talking probably
80. Yeah,
80
80 something
if
miles.
without it. I mean, that's a long bike section. Thankfully, you got to end it with a fast downhill, right?
Yeah.
To kind of get back into civilization, because like I know there was not much phone signal, and then we at home kind of got blocked out because one of the servers ended up malfunctioning, so nobody knew where anybody was for a couple hours. And like I woke up and I'm like, oh, it looks like people are sleeping in the last TA and getting Mary, I thought you guys had taken like a 5-hour sleep, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like maybe they're just like, screw it, we were so far ahead, like we've got this. And because the dots weren't moving, and then come to find out the server was messed up. So I didn't get to see a lot of the movement through that area. But Chip, you guys talked about that there was a fun single track section that was just amazing, single track up by 21. Is that right?
Yeah, it really was. Like you had to get after the Resurrection Trail, we were on roads for a little bit. And then yeah, coming around up towards Whittier, that trail was really amazing. It was so great to get off of the road, and every time we were on a road, once we got off the road, we're like, oh, we're back where we belong. We're in the woods, and we just had a second wind there. It was really great. So
yeah,
beautiful.
and that was a low for us, that road, because it was like I was falling asleep and nav is starting to get wonky, and where are we? We're not following it. It was hot and just we're getting baked in the sun. And then you see this point that looks like it's going to be really hard up and around, and it's like, you're kind of thinking we should skip this one. This is going to just be gnarly. Like Jeff put this on here just to make us do 1,000-foot elevation and back down. But meanwhile, it was one of the best, most picturesque points, and all of the single track was fast and flowy and fun. And so, I'm so glad we did that point. And it just brought us back to life to get off the road with the 55-mile-per-hour traffic and the loud noises and get back in the woods. And it was like having 2 hours of sleep.
Nice. And Jake,
I was just gonna say on that point, our team skipped that point, and we skipped it because we wanted to have more time for the glacier. And now it's like that would be the one point that I'm sorry that you know that we missed and didn't go after, just because you know we were trying to save time for the glacier, and also you know legs for later in the race. But yeah, I was kind of after hearing Chip and Andrea say how beautiful that was, I was like, oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, like that was a long bike section, and you guys get to the end of that and know that you have really the next paddle section in the hike possibly to Whittier if you decide to make that. And then you get back over to the resort and you can make the decision of what you're going to do, if you're going to do the relay, if you're going to go up to the glacier, what you're going to do. But Jason, you had a fun story on that paddle section out to Whittier, so I want you to tell that because you guys had a pretty unique way to get across.
Yeah, well, you know, I grew up in Michigan with a lot of rivers and lakes and stuff, and so I've spent a lot of time paddling, and then met my wife about 15, 16 years ago, and her dad was big into sailing, had a sailboat on Lake Michigan, taught me how to sail, and I noticed kind of early on we had a lot of time to talk about it, and Jeff had kind of pulled up and said, hey, the conditions on the lake are getting pretty rough out there. Teams are taking 2 hours to paddle across. I think it was TA 26 or something like that. And sort of said, hey, you should consider maybe just going straight to the mouth of the river and just going down river on the Whitewater. And sort of got to thinking, well, we've got this really good, it was like sort of our emergency shelter, and it was a tarp, and the loops were kind of stitched pretty well on it, kind of like double stitched. So I was like, hey, you know, maybe we can sail this thing. And I think the wind when we got out there was probably, I don't know, like 30, 40 knots at some point. And so we kind of came up with this, I sort of started off with the idea generally, but everybody kind of contributed a little bit to it. And we kind of took both our boats, kind of got them side by side, got them together. I've got a video actually keyed up. I can to show you what it looks like. If you can I don't know if you can let me share the screen.
Why don't you add that in the comments on Facebook so everyone can see.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
Because just for time purposes, like we're running close to the hour and a half already. So
but we sailed across. It was like definitely took us way less time and effort. It wasn't pretty rough, but kind of very simple catamaran style, rough sailboat using our paddles and things as masts and steering. But honestly, when we're talking high and low points of the race, I mean, I think that was an all-time high. I was one kind of getting everybody coordinating, wasn't spending a whole lot of time looking back to see if we were actually making any progress, and it felt like it was getting real wonky. Water was kind of coming up over the side of the boat. It was white capping out there pretty well too for that kind of lake. And for a minute I was like, hey, let's just screw it, let's just take it apart, do the paddles. And then Rosie said, I had her facing backwards because that made her farther up and kind of gave us the nice angle on the sail to catch the cross. She's like, no, look behind you. And like that was like kind of all time, because all of a sudden like the coast is gone. Like it was way back there, and that was maybe 10 minutes in. And I just kind of was just pumped up, like yelling, looking out to the right at the glacier down there. It was just like really amazing. So, I mean, that was an all-time high because it really took all of us coming together. I mean, I said earlier, we're all very different racers, had never raced before. We're really just a band of misfits and ne'er-do-wells looking for a team. And really, I think that was a really good moment for us to just come together and realize, hey, we can do something cool. So.
And I just want to touch on this paddle section real quick with Mary, because like there weren't a lot of teams that went up and over to Whittier. And we've heard from other past racers like Rob Preston and Jason about it being shittier in Whittier. And what was that experience like for you guys to get up and over that? And was it the same as when you were there the last time?
When we were there the last time, we paddled into Whittier. Came in on pack rafts, and then we had like a sea kayak that we had to do out there, which that last time we actually were back in that same lake paddling, and the icebergs at that time of year in June were big enough that our checkpoint was to take a picture of one of your teammates on top of an iceberg. So being there in July, the icebergs were like, the size of a football. They weren't that exciting anymore, but it was kind of interesting to see how different it was. I mean, it was just a long out and back trek to Whittier. I found no point in it whatsoever, but I found out, I just felt like it was just like a torture checkpoint to make the teams, the faster teams be out a little bit longer. But one of my teammates was pretty sick, and so it was a pretty rough slog for him. But we just took his pack and took care of him and tried to get some food in him. So but the cool part was is while we were over there, it was the one time we ran into two bear. One was right on the trail about 10 feet away. So
Oh, geez.
had we not got to do that bonus checkpoint, we wouldn't have seen our bear for the race.
See, you can thank Jeff. So I want to skip ahead to back to the resort. The relay was kind of a fuck you from Jeff, where both teams had to go up to the top to the Alyeska resort of mountain up there, and come back down. And then I think most teams knew at that point, other than Bones, that because of the weather deterioration and how bad it was really getting up there and the visibility, for safety reasons, the decision had to be made to cancel the glacier section. I think right at the same time that Hunter and Nick made that decision with you guys, Mary, up there on the mountain, the rescue service was calling Jeff and saying, we can't even fly up there. There's not going to be visibility for like 18 hours. And so there was no even way to rescue anybody if something was to happen. But Mary, you guys were up there at the time. Was it an easy decision based on what you were seeing?
I mean, it was hard to tell because we were there in the dark, so we waited till sunrise before we made any sort of we sat for an hour in this outhouse. Thankfully, there was an outhouse there where we were able to get 6 people because we had Jeff and or not Jeff, Hunter and Nick joined our team while we were in the outhouse. Because the one little shelter up there was closed. Some people were already up in there and they locked the door and asked us to, they checked to make sure we were okay, and then they're like, okay, now please be quiet. And we're like, okay. So we went and hid in the outhouse. By sunrise, the visibility was still nothing, and then the wind was so bad and the rain that it just didn't feel right. And because we weren't sure what exactly was ahead of us, we weren't that upset to make the decision or have the decision made for us, but it's still a bummer. And knowing the knowing the ability of all the other teams out there, we were also worried for them. Bones was probably one of the most experienced teams there when it comes to glacier travel, and it was even making us a little bit nervous. So we were kind of, as long as, we weren't upset when they made the decision, but it's always hard to have to leave a checkpoint behind.
Yeah. And I want to go to Hillary on the navigational snafu that you guys made, and kind of talk through that, because I was watching the tracker and I was like, no. First of all, I mean, I love Megan, and I know she was probably beating herself up for this. But when you guys went up that trail, you got up to the point where you thought you could make a left-hand turn to go up the mountain. And what happened?
Yeah, I thought maybe you guys missed that on the tracker. I guess not. So
I caught it.
They don't miss anything. Yeah, they don't miss nothing.
yeah, we went on a 5-hour excursion. Beautiful scenery over that way, by the way. It's late in the race, and Megan, she's a solid navigator, right? And I think it was a combination of everyone's tired. We got a little overconfident. We started getting really, I wouldn't say careless with our decisions, but we weren't checking like we were in, prior checkpoints, making sure, hey, are we going the right way? So it was a low point for our team for sure, but I think that we managed to figure out, not as quickly as we would have liked, that hey, we're not going in the right direction. We're able to recognize that, get back on track. We were expecting to be able to cross over by a waterfall. Turns out there's a hand tramp that's not there. We just, it was a great learning experience to say, hey, make sure you have really good controls in place from a navigational standpoint. That late in the race, make sure everyone's checking, right, that you're going the right direction. And if something doesn't feel right, or you feel like you're going too long, it's always great to have someone say, hey, are we sure we're going a little long? Should we be looking for something? So I think it was just a great checkup for us to say, hey, we're all responsible for these decisions, and speak up if you feel like something's not going right, so we can catch these things a little bit more quickly. But I'm really proud of them for persevering, if you will, because that was definitely a low point for us. We reset and we got back out there. And we're able
It was tough because I saw you guys went up this way. I think we Live Your Adventure, Go Live Your Adventure went up that way as well. But when I watched you guys go up this way, I was like, oh, okay, they'll figure it out. And I didn't know about the hand tram at the time. And then when you made the right hand turn and went out this way, I was like, oh no, like just figure it
Yeah,
out.
they were heading back to Whittier.
And I was like, look, you're exhausted at that point. You're probably not even thinking about, look, this is a trail. Like it's probably going where we need it to. And it goes to show that you can't, you have to have those, like you said, the checks and balances in place. And look, a lot of credit, because a lot of people would have got back to the resort and just said, fuck it, we're done. Like we had our adventure. We don't need to go get any more checkpoints, but you guys went and got the rest of them and finish it out. So that shows a lot of fortitude as well. So as we have like the last 15 minutes, and I want to be able to spend a little bit of time with each of you talking about briefly about your high point and low point of the race. And Angel, I'll start with you. Tell me about what your low point and high point was of the race.
Yeah, that's a low point is a difficult thing to come up with sometimes. As a general rule for this particular race, I really had a great time. I think probably the hardest part was us trying to manage with our sick teammate on that last trek. We didn't really know how sick he was. We didn't know he was sick. We didn't know if he was just he needed fuel, he was dehydrated, right? We really had no idea. And so just trying to figure out how to navigate that the best way that we could, try to support him the best way that we could, and just get back to the finish line with everybody all in one piece. So that was a difficult thing to just work through as a team, I think. So not really a low point, really, but more of a learning experience, I guess.
Yeah.
And I would say the high point was the downhill on the backside of Resurrection Trail. That was just by far the most fun, long, extended downhill I've ever had my entire life. And it was so fast and flowy and fun, and I would love to do it again.
I think a lot of people are pissed that you just took that because now they can think of something.
I'm glad I got to go first.
So let's go to your teammate. Let's go to Brenda and let's talk. Tell me your high and low point.
Well, my high point, that was easy. It would be finally getting into the water and ferrying across that white water and getting across and doing it without any issues. That was definitely my high point. Because I felt like, what are we going to do? We just couldn't come together with a good decision, and that ended up being the best decision, and it worked well. So that was definitely the high point. The low point is kind of the same as Angel. You want to take care of your teammate, absolutely, first and foremost, that's sick, but that you're losing places, you're losing spots, and we couldn't go up and get that 2-pointer checkpoint up there. And so that was a low point for me, but it's still, I enjoyed the race 100%, even with that, and just knowing that we were able to get him back, and the fact that he powered through what he had to go through to get all the checkpoints, but that real high climb with COVID. So, we've all had COVID, so we know what that's like and how weak you feel. So yeah, that was definitely the low point.
Jason, what about you?
Well, I think I hit the high point in the sailing adventure. I mean, nobody else had on my team had ever sailed before, and I got to take them sailing for the first time. But the low point, I think probably a lot of people when I ran into you on the trail, I got a few remarks saying, "Why are you always smiling, man?" Yeah, but the low point was actually kind of when we were sort of biking the Resurrection Trail. That was really when we bottomed out as a team, and kind of really things started to feel real bad. And I was in the woods just literally sobbing, like, why is everything so, why isn't everybody coming together? Why is this so different than what we expected? And my teammate pulled me out of it. I think and then we'd run into breaking butterflies, and I think Hillary gave me some charcuterie, which then just like pulled me out of the bottom, and then we just sort of straightened up and then really got to working together. But honestly, like the all-time high point, I got to give it to Jeff. I mean, as a race director, you really inspired a lot of confidence in me. I mean, I made the mistake of watching the documentary on the last Expedition Alaska with my wife, and there were some real safety questions watching that, a bit of drama, right? But you sort of had already reassured us that you wanted to make it a safe experience for everybody, and you delivered on that. And more impressively too is you don't live in Alaska, you live in Georgia, and I know you've been on the show and everything with Hunter, but just pulling this together and making it a safe experience. I mean, that I think I could speak on everybody's behalf in just pure appreciation and knowing that future races that Warrior does, for sure, continue on, because honestly, that's the thing that my family most appreciated about the race, is that they were all worried about me getting eaten by a bear or falling in a crevasse or something like that, and none of those things happened. And frankly, that just real appreciation here on my part for my first expedition race, and certainly not going to be my last one.
Awesome. So Hillary, I'll come to you because first of all, who has a charcuterie board during an adventure race? How did this come about? And I mean, I've been trying to get Jeff to provide smoothies at the transitions, but I mean, a charcuterie board is ridiculous. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so that wasn't me. That was Rebecca on my team. The first time we realized what she had with her was on Resurrection Pass. She comes out and she has this almost like a plate. I imagined a plate at that point in the race of salamis with some Parmesan chunks, and she was handing out, and it was really kind of a morale lifter, because at that point we had gotten into the cow parsnip and found out how fun that absolutely is. And you have those thoughts like, why didn't I bring the soap the lady at REI sold me? But yeah, she had that, and that was, I think, a huge morale booster for our team, for a couple other teams. But yeah, definitely race with her if you like charcuterie, I guess.
Apologies to Rebecca for mistaking that. So much appreciation for the charcuterie.
Real quick before we get to your highs and lows, JD is joining the show for the last 8 minutes. So JD is late, but that's all right. We're gonna ask him a couple questions, but tell me your highs and lows.
I think not to, share what everyone else has, but definitely like the cow parsnip, that was challenging for our team. It's not fun to have that experience. And I think the highs, one night, you're tired, it's towards the end, you find the whole team, singing Timber by Kesha. It's kind of uplifting, right? You're just all of a sudden you're all singing the same song, and it just kind of reminds you that you choose to be out there. It's not always exactly what you expected, but at the end of the day, it just made me feel like, I picked the right 3 people to do this experience with. So that was, a small thing, but it definitely, I look back on, that's probably one of my fondest memories of this race.
Awesome. Donna, what about you?
Oh, highs and lows are hard for me, because I just enjoyed the whole race. There were times when, it was difficult, but I mean, just the scenery was so beautiful. Walking in those forests, the forests were like magical and enchanting. So I have to say the highs for me was just going through those forests where you felt like you were like as big as an ant, and the trees were like ginormous things, and there was moss and fungus and all sorts of things there. And I think the lowest point for me was late in the race, when everybody's tired and our team struggled a little bit, where we were getting a little bit fractured and just trying to bring the team back together into one cohesive bunch so we could cross the finish line and have a good experience. So I think that you run into that in every race when you're going long time. You get people get on different things that they do might fluster you or bother you or whatever, and then just trying to keep everybody together and not have everybody crash at the same time, because everybody gets down at one point or another. So everybody together and
yeah. No, that's awesome. And listen, that's the toughest part of getting through an adventure race that is this long and this hard, is that.
That's the toughest part.
JD, I'm going to mute you because we got some feedback. Chip and Andrea.
So I guess I'll start off. Like I said earlier, it's like it doesn't matter how hard it is in the bushes and the trails and all this stuff. Adventure racers persevere, but the minute you put me on a road in the hot sun, and I'm just traffic and I'm falling asleep, it's like that's not where I belong. And so that was my low in the race, was just having to hammer down a road in the heat. And I was just like, this sucks. I've been on this bike for 50 miles or whatever. And then the high, I think, is the Resurrection Trail. We hit it exactly at the right time. Like going up to it kind of sucked, going through all the weeds and the mud and the bushes and the cow parsnips and all that. But we kind of popped out and the sun's rising and the clouds are burning off. And we got to that little cabin and took like a 10 or 15-minute nap. And then we just bombed that hill, and it was just such a beautiful day. And there's not many beautiful days in Alaska. They're mostly cloudy and spitting rain. And so the fact that we hit the highlight of the race exactly at the right time was a huge pick-me-up for us.
Yeah, I agree. Those are both my highs and lows as well. But just in general, like Alaska itself, it met my expectations and more. So it's wild and remote, and you know, I think I said this about Expedition Colorado, like it was the prettiest race, but I think Expedition Alaska might have topped it in beauty. And just yeah, that Resurrection Trail, and you know, we complained about the road biking, but there was really not very much percentage of that, and there was far more single track, I think, in this race than a lot of adventure races that we do. So I really appreciated all of the single track. That was my high. Yeah, and the low was the biking in the wind.
And Mary, I'm going to come to you as the winner of the race with your team.
Yeah, and the low was the biking.
What were your highs and lows?
I guess all the highs were kind of similar to what everybody else had, but for me, it was the fact that I think I laughed for 5 days straight. I love Team Bones. We have a great disposition between all of us, and it was probably the first time in a long time that the team was just, I don't know, we were just we were just laughing the whole time. It was fantastic, and not too many lows other than I was a little sleepy on the first day, which is kind of rare, but
well,
it
that's
felt like
because
5
you
o'clock.
didn't get there until like midnight the night
Yeah.
before too. So like you had all those, you and Angel both had those travel issues. And
Yeah.
JD, first of all, I sucks that you're just getting here for the last 5 minutes, because I have a lot of questions. But the first one that I have is, where are your pants? Because
There.
I don't think I've ever been at a race that you were at where you don't lose a pair of pants.
This one was purely accidental in my dry suit because I went commando. I think Joe and the other someone else got Chris maybe got the shock at the TA.
Well, listen, I mean, we're finishing. We're right up at the last minute, so I'm sorry that we're not.
Yeah.
Real quick though, tell us about your high and low moments of this race, and like what you love the most about this.
That's real easy. So day one, the lowest low would be that damn creek crossing that we spaghettied, you know, like let's try this, every freaking avenue. It's like beathead here. I'm like, I'm just gonna swim it. So, you know, live and learn. And then the highest high I'd say was finishing with 4 team members on a girl I literally just picked up 2 days before in the Yukon. Like I went to her house and trained on the way driving the Alcan. She shows up, hardcore dog musher, Yukon trained, and followed through.
Wow.
So there you go. 2 pros and cons.
That's awesome. Jeff, first of all, I just want to say, I mean, if what people are saying here doesn't get people at 2026 at the race, I don't know what else will. Between the pictures from Randy and this epic course that you put together, I can't wait to see what you do in 2026. Thank you for putting together such a great race. Yeah.
One alibi. I don't know if I missed it, but so I read somewhere with Jeff, were you going to address the final placement of the placings? Yes. I was at the end.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
As soon as Doug's
All right.
over, yeah.
Okay, wait for it.
Wait for it.
Let it roll.
I just wanted to say thank you. I think it's been an epic, it was an epic adventure. It was awesome to cover. Thank you for the opportunity to cover it because, listen, all of you inspire me. And I know you inspired a lot of people with your tenacity and your grit and just going at it for 5 days, out there in the Alaskan wild. So thank you all. Thank you all for being a part of this. Jeff, what do you have last?
So we've already talked about 2026. So we got an email when I got back. The governor's office heard about the race, and is interested in it. They reached out basically and said, how can we help produce 2026? And I said, fund it, period. Fund the damn thing. If we can reduce the rate, that the expense that the racers have to, they will visit Alaska. And that's their whole thing, is getting racers to visit Alaska. So we have 2 years to deal with that. And right now it looks like we're going to move the race in 2026 to June. So it's going to be June 12th through the 17th. That way that the grass is only waist high. Okay. So that'll get us out of some of the salmon season. It'll get us kind of out of the busier season. Hotels are cheaper, travel is cheaper, all kinds of things are cheaper in June. And that was one of the suggestions by the governor's office and the Forest Service. So we've already submitted the design because they want the design now. They want to start working on the design because they felt, even though it was a year in advance that I gave them this design, that it wasn't enough time. So now we're giving them 2 years. We're giving them 2 years time to think about it. In 2026, there's going to be a glacier travel in the middle of the race and at the end. So you'll have 2 opportunities to, get up on the glacier and have a much more challenging race in 2026. So when we got back here, we were able to review the results, and we had a discrepancy between registration says 45 and over for masters, but the actual website says 50 and over. We've changed to 50 and over across the board. It just so happens to be that we forgot the registration. So Team Go Adventure actually has a 45-year-old on their team, so they're not in the Masters division. So they dropped down. 50-60 is actually our Masters winners, and Florida Extreme is our second place finishers for Expedition Alaska.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Fucking A. Oops, sorry.
Hey, you don't have to apologize on this show.
This is a rated R show.
It's an adult
right.
show.
Oh, by the way, 2026, that'll be good moving up to June because that's right on the solstice cusp. So no headlamps required.
More daylight, yeah.
Yep, there's all kinds of good reasons for that. And again, we picked July because that was the window of opportunity we had with our Warrior dates, but now June is going to be the absolute best time. So set aside the entire month of June 2026 to be in Alaska.
Well, I can't wait. Listen, I hope that all of you at home that have watched along for the week of the broadcast that we were doing, that were watching the dots of all of your friends and family. I hope you've enjoyed this show.
Oh, by the way, Doug did a fantastic job. Round of applause. Doug, amazing broadcasting during that. Absolutely.
Thanks. Listen,
what's your job tomorrow?
It really was my pleasure. I love doing this because I'm passionate about it. I love the sport. I love all of you guys because you guys are what make the sport. And I want to just make it a better experience for everybody. So I hope that all of you out there will continue to follow Warrior. You continue to follow AR.watch as we're going to be doing more races. We're going to be covering nationals in next month. So you'll see us out there. We might have something special that we're covering maybe next week somewhere special, Jeff.
We will? What's next week? I can't say where I'm going.
I can't either, but it's going to be awesome. So stay tuned next week for the surprise. And we're going to have some fun coverage next week. Guys, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing all of you out at other races. I hope to see a lot of you. Who all is going to be at nationals?
I'm still in Alaska, too far for me to drive.
Come on.
It's only 30 hours.
I look forward to seeing all of you guys at nationals. I look forward to seeing all of you at home on the next broadcast. Thank you all. Make sure you get out there and live the adventure.
Spot on.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.